you're live.
It's happening. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate, VP of Communications at Dentsu, and I wanted to welcome you all to the first inaugural Forging New Frontiers conference. What started off as a white paper to gauge the challenges women founders and women in business were facing in the 21st century quickly impassioned myself and Sarah and Helen into wanting to do more. And so more than mentors or one-off conferences, we, women, needed a community. And so a community where we can listen, we can share, we can collaborate, we can cheerlead, we can promote, and we can leverage resources and tools from a network like us, Dentsu. So we're building that community. And this, today, is the start. And so with that, I wanted to kick it off with some thank yous. Thank you to the women who are freeing up their time to speak, to connect, and to share their experiences through our panels and our speakers this week. You are an inspiration, and I have truly loved getting to know you more and more. Thank you to the women at Dentsu who helped develop the creative, develop the website, and led the research paper. And Sarah Ridge, who's back in the green room, thank you for your support and your trust and your encouragement. Thank you to our program partner, Global Entrepreneurship Network, Elaine and Tom. Thank you for your collaboration in developing the workshop programming and curating the best in-class mentorship program. And on that, the mentorship program, if you are a female founder who's tuning in and you're interested in taking part, please reach out to myself and Sarah. The workshops in particular on Wednesday and Thursday, please do attend those if you can as well. And then finally, most importantly, thank you to my fellow founders of Forging New Frontiers, Sarah and Helen. Your passion, your brilliance, your energy, your endless positivity is contagious. I couldn't have done this without you, and I'm so proud of this week. But I'm most honored to call you close allies and friends. So before we get started, a couple of quick housekeeping items. Recording, yes, we are recording, and at the conclusion of the conference, we will send out an email with all of the links if you've registered. So life happens, we get it. If you have to tune in and out, don't worry, you won't miss a single bit of any of this information. The Q&A feature is active for some of our speakers and our panelists. Please do submit. We'll try our best to respond. But as I was just speaking to one of our speakers today, the other great thing is connect via LinkedIn. I know a lot of our speakers and our panelists, and the three of us included, if you do have any questions afterwards, that's likely the best way. And then finally, the chat is open. So feel free to engage with fellow attendees, with speakers, with us, and that's that. So let's get started. Sarah, I'm passing it over to you.
Thanks, Kate. I'm Sarah Armstrong, SVP Client Solutions here at Dentsu, and mom of three very strong, powerful, and loud girls. I'm excited to be doing events like this and continuing this conversation, not only for ourselves and for the impact on women in business today, but on women of the future as well, and really getting them excited about what lies in front of them. To kick everything off, just wanted to sort of talk a little bit about today. So today's focus is women in a post-COVID world, and we're going to be covering business challenges disproportionately affecting women from all walks of life and backgrounds before and during the pandemic. And really, most importantly, what we can do to uplift each other now and into the future. We're going to start that quickly with a keynote from Michelle Scarborough, who's the managing partner of BDC Capital Women's in Technology Venture Fund. And she's going to impart some pearls of wisdom and share her thinking with you. And we're really excited for that. That's going to be followed by a panel that I will be moderating. And a panel includes women founders, business owners, CEOs, and mentors, all who are going to put a lens on what it's like to be a woman in business today, but also what the impact of the year has brought them. and what that's meant for the businesses and women around them. So really excited to have that around 12:30. And then finally, we're going to end our afternoon with Dawn Desjardins, who's the Vice President, Deputy Chief Economist, RBC Economics, who also happens to be a Dentsu client, and bring her forward to talk a little bit about women in a COVID world and her perspective on that as well. So lots happening this afternoon. We're excited to have you. Helen?
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kate. This week has been, it's been a long few months of us putting this together, and I'm very proud of what we've created. As much as we could, we really wanted to share as many resources and people we know with as many women as we can, and we wanted to reach out to the whole community. It's not just one day. Of course, we always want more and more, so it became a whole week. So it ended up being not just International Women's Day, but International Women's Week, because there's a lot for us to share. So the remainder of the week, we'll have speakers, we're having panels discussing future workplace, the skills critical to leadership, and also the scaling and building a successful business. So there's a lot we're covering this week, and we're thank you for joining us. So keep coming at 12 o'clock every single day. That's Eastern time. To kick it off, I really want to welcome Michelle Scarborough, not only as, yes, she's the managing partner and strategic investments of the Women in Tech Fund. She's also an investor in my startup, Odea.ai. As a founder of a startup, of a high-tech startup, it's been very challenging, and having the right investors supporting us was really important to us. And especially that we are getting funded but supported by women in tech funders and by VCs and by angel investors. So that was really important to us. And Michelle has been a cheerleader, and her whole team has supported what we have been building for the last 2 years. So it's very touching, and thank you for joining us. In her position, she's not only leading and creating vision of what Women in Tech Fund should be, she's also executing on major strategic initiatives to fill current and future financing gaps that are in the Canadian ecosystem. And she's also responsible for BDC's $200 million investment to bring capital to high growth tech companies with women in lead. So this has been an honor for her to be here, and I'm really excited about what I'm going to hear next. So Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Helen and Sarah and Kate and everyone for being here. And Helen, I don't know, you just put me on that pedestal and I'm going to fall right off it. Okay, so
I'll catch you. I'm right here for you.
All right, thank you. That's good. I need all the help I can get. No, but seriously, welcome to International Women's Day /week, as we've heard. And kudos to these folks who have, through Dentsu, taken up the mantle to launch Female Foundry and yet another program in the ecosystem to support women building and leading innovative companies, both locally and globally. So kudos to you for doing that. It's efforts like this that really drive where the future of women and the future of leadership is going. And that's what I'm going to spend a little bit of time on. I know we have a packed schedule too, so I'm going to hopefully give you some pearls of wisdom. And if you've got other pearls, you can send them to me by LinkedIn and I'll add them to the next one. But, Helen asked me to provide a few remarks, but I just, when I started my career many moons ago, in oil and gas, I was one of the only women walking around the oil field. I was one of the only women who wanted to start an oil company. And, that theme sort of has been my career path. When I moved out of that and into renewable energy and was financed by a very prominent investor, I was one of the only women in renewable energy, and that was in the early 2000s. Fast forward to turning into a venture capitalist after my run at an entrepreneurship. And as a venture capital investor, you continue to be an entrepreneur no matter what you do, working with entrepreneurs, understanding where they come from, understanding what it means to make payroll at the end of the month and manage the busy life between Sarah's 3 kids, and who all I'm sure want to be entrepreneurs at some point too. And also, you know, managing all of the challenges with building a business that is high growth. But I can tell you that joining BDC and leading up the charge to really build the Women in Technology Venture Fund from the ground up was really something that I couldn't pass up the opportunity to do. And the reason for that was because as a woman who had been one of the only people in that room, the ability to give back and the ability to do things differently and to invest in other women leaders that were growing their careers, both in venture capital and as entrepreneurs like Helen, building high growth, super interesting, potential global players, was really where I wanted to spend my time. And the whole team rallies around that, and the whole of BDC really rallies around that. So I'm really lucky in my career that I've been able to sort of take those steps, but also to land where I am today and be able to do something that has enormous impact, not only in Canada, but globally. But enough about me. I wanted to spend a little bit of time giving you a few stats just to kind of get us rolling, and then talk really more about where we're going and where I see the biggest opportunities for us in this, you know, obviously ever-changing environment. But just a couple of statistics that I think are really important, particularly for your discussions that you're going to have today and over the course of the week. And those really relate to where financing is going. Obviously, the need for financing and the need for financial support for companies has never been more critical to their success. And particularly coming out of COVID and looking at recovery and trying to compete in either a local, regional, national, or international basis. But we still see a big gap in financing, and I know some of that's going to be addressed. And that gap is really with respect to more venture capital going into earlier stage companies. You know, we look at some of the data in Crunchbase, for example, and I'm just going to cite some statistics here because I won't be able to remember them off the top of my head. But you know, more in Crunchbase's data shows that more than 800 female founded startups globally received a total of 4.9 billion in venture funding in 2020. And that may sound like a lot of money, but it's actually a significant precipitous decrease from 2019. So that wasn't great. And not only did total funding from female-led companies fall in 2020, but the proportion of dollars to founders also declined. So also not a great statistic. There's many variables and reasons for that we probably won't have time to go into today, but for another session. PitchBook also showed that there was, you know, a slight gap at the very early stage, but that female founders in the very early stage, so I mean pre-seed, seed stage, kept pace with the broader market, but still lagged significantly behind later stage investments. And that would be consistent with what we see in the Canadian marketplace. For sure, these are mostly US statistics, but definitely in the Canadian marketplace, that's true. And, you know, finally, when we think about the overall landscape of venture capital, and what we're going to talk about where we're going and some of the great things that we're seeing in the market, but we are still at the early stages of a precipitous change in the way financing goes into women-led and diverse companies. And we are definitely at a precipitous change where there's lots of great things happening, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Where more money is being deployed and is looking to be deployed into diverse leaders in the technology space, in venture capital funds, and as angel investors looking to invest in more diverse and sustainable, think ESG type organizations. So we're on the precipice of that, and we're moving definitely in that direction. But the biggest shift that we saw last year during COVID, in addition to what we just talked about in terms of capital decline, is the rise of technology and the rise of innovation. And there's never been a better time to build a company, to grow a business, to launch a new initiative, and to grow into technology. Technology will continue to be a dominant driver of the economy going forward, and a dominant driver of even small and medium enterprises that are looking to build their business, even if it's in a local context. The leveraging of technology so that you can expand, even if it is from your own backyard, will be critical path for you. And the ways in which we're seeing things and some of the themes that Helen alluded to at the very beginning, that are going to play themselves out, not just this year, but as we look over the next 7 to 10 years, again, are things that we need to be thinking about and things that we need to be taking action on right away. The way we work has changed, as everybody knows. Global talent and the competition for talent continues to increase. And I can tell you from the Canadian point of view, the amount of global talent looking to come to Canada to build their careers in the technology space, to start companies, is unbelievable. And the quality of that talent is also enormously high, meaning that these people are coming with engineering backgrounds and so on, not to compete with the existing talent pool in Canada, but to supplement it, given that they come with extensive international backgrounds and an understanding of international markets that some of us don't have. And so adding that valuable resource to your management team and to the depths of your of the teams of your companies will be important to consider. Recruitment also super high, super hot, and going to continue in at least in this country, probably in the US as well. But what's even more important than all of those things is that the culture of the workplace has changed. And workplace culture has taken center stage. The desire to create alignment around companies that have core values, and you can ask Helen about her Odia's core values as well, but the desire to create alignment around core values, around sustainability, around impact, we are driving in that direction at a very, very accelerated rate. And customers, people within the teams, within the companies, investors are all aligning around the need and the desire to build a more sustainable, equitable world. And so things that you can do and things that you're thinking about that align with the visions for yourself and the visions that you have for your future will be very important considerations as you're moving forward. Heart-centered leadership, and I know you're going to spend some time talking about leadership in the next few days. Leadership from the heart, also critical. People want to see the person. People want to see you as the person, as opposed to the textbook version of yourself. And being able to lead with your heart will truly separate you from where we have been and certainly to where we are going. And diversity more than anything, diversity of people, diversity of thought, diversity of culture, all of those things are being critically and significantly recognized. And you know, we obviously as the Women in Tech Fund, we are that is our priority. But many venture capital funds are looking at diversity as a part of the way in which they will make decisions going forward, as a mechanism by which they will put money into your company and become your partner in investing alongside you as you grow your business. These are seat changes that are taking place right now in real time and will continue. It's front and center. It's not going to change. It's not going to go away. And that's a good thing. And it's, you know, about time we got here, but at least we got here. We're also, you know, you're going to be talking about scaling your businesses as well. And scaling also critically important. But what's also important with respect to scaling your business is your ability to connect to your customer, to connect to your own ecosystem that you're building with your company. Supplier diversity now is a new norm. So if you're building a company looking for customers or have customers and you're not talking to them about getting on their list of diverse suppliers, you should be doing that. You should be thinking about how you make that happen. And like I've talked about before, more money than ever is looking for diverse leadership, for women in the lead, for diverse leadership teams who will take up the helm and for whom they can back and become a partner as you evolve along the life cycle of your business. So these are all things that are happening in real time that are not going to go away and that are only going to continue to accelerate as we move through 2021 and beyond that. And that's, you know, again, a good thing. And the third, you know, piece that we see happening right now, in addition to the two that I just mentioned, are really the refocusing of community, the refocusing of the network and the ecosystem. And that could be your own ecosystem of companies and partners that you have in addition to your team. So I'm thinking holistically about an ecosystem. but the power of that ecosystem to grow your business will become critically important as well. It's no longer just about, I, do a deal with Joe Blow down the street and he or she pays me for something and we do an exchange and that's it. There's a movement towards relationship building for the long term. And that includes, as you think about your customers, as you think about customer success, as you think about the success of your company in relation to your customers' success, all of those things are coming sort of full circle. And that network effect and that collaborative effect is really, again, a big push and a big part of where things are going and where we continue to see elevation. And that includes even when you're talking to corporate VCs. So a lot of those things are exploding, ecosystems are exploding, and these are all directionally moving in the right direction, and where we definitely want to see everything going. And I will just say that part of our mandate as the Women in Technology Venture Fund is to develop the ecosystem. And when we started the fund 3.5 years ago, there was a very nascent ecosystem for women in tech leadership in Canada, and a very nascent ecosystem of women investors investing in those women founders, those women leaders, or otherwise. And so part of our mandate and part of our mission is, yes, to invest in venture backable, venture profile businesses like Odaya as an example, but it's also to develop the ecosystem so that we have an ecosystem that sustains itself over time, that is composed of a diversity of leaders, including many new women leaders that are coming to the forefront right now, and to create and support and work with a number of partners in the Canadian and the North American marketplace, for that matter, that are prepared to exponentially accelerate the growth of leadership among women, leadership among diverse leaders, and really take that to the next level. And as a result of those efforts, we can't do it ourselves, and we wouldn't do it ourselves. But seeing things like what Dentsu is trying to do and pulling together groups like this is super important and absolutely essential to your success. When I was asked, I'll close up in a second here, but when I was asked what I would tell my 20-year-old self, I said, gosh, I don't even know where I would start. There's so many things that I've learned, but I think the one big thing would be, to take advantage of the opportunities like this, to leverage the power of the collective of women leaders, to learn from them, to network with them, to ask them for advice, to seek their mentorship and their support. To really surround myself with those people that were like-minded, but also not so like-minded that I got stuck in my own way and wasn't able to kind of get out of that. So one of the big things that, I think as you're starting to embark on this journey, or you're in the middle of this journey, and as we move into the panel in a second and listen to some of the wisdom from some of the great people that are going to be on it, I think claiming your power every day and sort of parking your fear. There's a lot of, I talk to founders all the time that say, God, I'm just like, I have imposter syndrome. I don't think I can do this. I'm totally afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't worry about it. Everybody, everybody's been there. Everybody's got the t-shirt. Nobody's going to worry about that. They're going to be more interested in where you can go and your vision and your ability to, grab the gold ring and actually go for it. I think the other piece that I would give myself, if I were 20 years old again, a long time ago, would be to listen to my gut and to be open to feedback and flexible to change. Look for opportunities even in the downside, and recognize really that sometimes the gift is in the pivot. And as some of you may know, if you're thinking about, building your company, or you've already built something and you're having to make changes, if you have to pivot, you have to pivot. That's just the way it goes. And as long as you've got a plan for that and a plan to execute on that, then you should be fine. And then finally, again, surrounding yourself with the best people so that you can ask for the help and also give the help. There's the whole ask, give thing. Lots of people are great at giving it. They're not terribly good at asking to receive it, me included. But super important to surround yourself with those people, just like in this network and in many others around the country and globally. And then the last thing that I'd leave you with is really just to pay it forward. I think it's really important that in order to foster women in leadership positions, we need to give them a hand, and we need to reach down and pull them up with us. And that's really the only way that this works. And that goes for all diverse leaders and all leaders generally. You can't do it alone. You can't do it by yourself. And the more we help each other, the better off we're going to be. So I'll leave you on that note. Happy International Women's Day /week. And really, you know, enjoy the process with this team. And congratulations again to Dentsu for pulling together a really great initiative, and looking forward to be part of it going forward.
I'll jump in and say, thank you, Michelle. I think, you know, so much there, and definitely pearls of wisdom, a lot of them. And further to that, you know, if I hear one thing loud and clear, and really the impetus for this week too, is pay it forward, have the conversation, stand up, and really bring those along with you. So thank you for sharing all that with us today. Really appreciate it. Amazing. So we'll move next into the panel. And as Michelle said, we've got a lot of different people here today. So we'll just take a sec. Kate and I are learning the ways of Zoom here and how to get everyone on the screen. So give us 30 seconds. This is our third or fourth hat, but we'll get everyone up on the screen here and launch into it. As Kate's doing that, you know, I'm really excited about this panel. I think when thinking about what we wanted to do with this week and all of this in general, we started to gather facts from across the industry to help build a white paper to really ground us and start the conversation. And we came across things that were startling, and not decades old stats that were startling, but like current today stats that you would have thought would have changed, but still remain part of our vernacular. And in some cases, some of those things have actually been made worse by the pandemic. Michelle talked a bit about that. I know Dawn's going to speak a little bit about that later, but that was the springboard for this week, and in particular this panel. So just to sort of ground us and not to play doomsday, because I think the point of this is to be inspirational, I do want to set the stage for sort of what we're seeing today. For years, you know, a lot of us have been part of this, working to close that gender pay gap and provide visibility and opportunity to women leaders and founders in our Canadian business economy. Yet despite slowly moving that needle, the division does persist, and women remain underrepresented in the C-suite. And the share of venture capital funding for women-led startups is lower than 2.8%. 2.8% is a high. It's lower than that right now. And critically, the pandemic has pushed women's participation in the labor force down to its lowest level in 3 decades. So throughout the pandemic, women's careers have been disproportionately and adversely impacted, and fields heavily populated by women have experienced greater layoffs, and the greater need for care and home and family responsibilities has often led to some women dropping out of the workforce altogether. That sets up a predicament, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. As women exit the labor force, they face a greater risk of an erosion of skills, which may further exacerbate that gender pay and wage gap that existed prior to the pandemic. And women grappling with business, leadership, and funding deficits may struggle to progress in the workforce, to launch their business, to build new skills and a strong community around them. So I think we can all agree that overall this undoubtedly brings adverse effects to the Canadian economy. So Michelle mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's very true. It's critical for us to create a community of listening and sharing and collaborating. And that's really what this panel is here to do today, to help us all have this conversation and forge a new frontier together. So I'm thrilled to have all of these women here today up on the screen. As we ask questions, I will introduce each of them. But you're going to hear from women founders on this panel, business owners, CEOs, mentors, all who provide a lens to what it's like to be a woman in business today, and as well what the impact of the year has brought to them, their businesses, and women around them. Additionally, they're going to share their wisdom and perspective. I originally thought perspective, but hearing Michelle say wisdom, I think wisdom's the word. Share our wisdom on what needs to improve to set women up for success as the economy transitions and eventually rebounds. So thank you to all of our 6 panelists today. We've got a lot to talk about and a lot of different perspectives. So let's dive right in. So let's set the stage and go back pre-pandemic to where we sit today. As a woman in business, I'm going to ask this to a few of you. What has been your experience and how have you navigated? So Lily, I'll start with you. You're founder and CEO of Think Dirty, a company launched well before the pandemic. You experienced firsthand the challenge for women balancing your career and home, seeking funding, advocating for yourself. Tell us a bit about your experience and how you've managed through the changes of this last year.
So for us, Think Dirty is a mobile app, so we don't need to depend on a physical storefront. So business revenue-wise, we experienced some less severe impact than most people. So I think for us, the biggest challenge is kind of how to manage like a remote workforce for me as a manager and kind of keep the morale going. So on that front, we try to still kind of keep the culture by having the meeting not strictly just about business and also like a small touch, kind of like replace a small talk component for every staff. So for us, we are kind of relatively fortunate group compared to most of the like restaurant business or retail business. So on that front, I would say we didn't get as much hit. But I just want to share, during the time when I started the company, like even though it wasn't like a crisis moment, but I personally actually got laid off. So I want to say like during opportunity like this, if women who do experience unemployment, it might be a good circumstantials and like motivation kind of push them to do what they really always wanted to do. So yeah, so that's kind of what I would like to share with other people thinking about other women think about starting company, but unfortunately got laid off and whatnot.
Can I toot your horn a bit too and talk a little bit about how your app is now in the App Store after many, many, many years? Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So so the origin story of Think Dirty, actually the backdrop is actually, I think a lot of us forgot the iPhone actually only around 10 years old. So when I first started the company, actually it's a very interesting, exciting moment when a lot of the kind of digital businesses or websites actually moving mobile. So our app is one of the very few mobile first app. And time flies. It's been 8 years since we launched it in the App Store. And we recently actually just got App of the Day, very exciting. I was sharing with the team in the green room that actually Apple have reached out like at least 4 times in the past 8 years to say potentially gonna feature, but this is kind of the only year they feature us. So when I first started, funding of course is a challenge. Like all the reason when all the previous panelists said. On top of that, I'm like a non-technical founder, meaning I'm not a developer. So my background actually, I work in advertising agency before as an art director. So more on a designer background. So non-business, non-technical, challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 is a solo founder. Again, a big no-no. And what's the other thing? I mean, the other thing is I'm a first-time founder. I haven't exited any company. So I know nothing about the startup industry. I mean, startup connection. Literally, it's just extremely naive and idealistic and just, thinking, I have this idea. I want to see it, exist in the world and everyone using it. That's the only reason why I started. And at that moment, I think same with a lot of women, you just, after years of not underestimated, kind of underappreciated in the workplace environment, you just have the desire to see if I just do it on my own, would people appreciate it? For me, it's just a challenge for myself, like I come from creative advertising background, so we are used to enter a lot of competition. So that was my background. So every time when I have an idea, I just enter a competition. The benefit of that is if you win is great validation. And the side perk for startup competition, you might win some startup capital. So literally that's how I started. And I saw a competition very last minute. Literally the deadline is next day. It was a Sunday night. So I filled the form and unexpectedly I got an email saying you got in the top 10 finalists and whatnot. You have 1 week to prepare the pitch. And I show up, I still remember it was at the Chorus Entertainment building. And that was be the first time I kind of have to pitch my app idea in front of an audience. Is actually not even that big. It was like maximum 30 people. But I was thinking it's gonna be the most stressful thing. So I actually went to the event the day before to practice and whatnot. And then when I show up at the actual event, actually a funny story is like I was the only woman in the top 10 finalists. And so when they actually did announce we win the competition, it's like the best feeling ever. And actually not even judges, like even all the judges, none of them are women too. So that's the funny thing, thinking back 8 years ago, and imagine how many incubator program, funding actually focus women founder is really, really great to see, because the beginning of the startup journey is even more lonelier, because again, every incubator you go to, you probably is the one of the very few. So all the other female founder I know in incubator, like we all quite close because there's only a handful of us. But now I see so many younger women are thinking about that, not just want to be like a software engineer, but actually think about starting company. So very exciting time for us for sure. And another thing about funding, I think, because I'm just coming from completely kind of this VC business world. Everything I just kind of go by a survival mode, whatever I can do to get the money to get it going. So early days, I bootstrap with literally my freelance income. I have probably I don't know, 3-4 jobs. And that's kind of how we support ourselves, the business wise. Every freelance income I got, I just go back in the business. And like I said, I enter a lot of startup competition. I take advantage of a lot of government founder friendly kind of it's not equity based, but like kind of financing program that are founder friendly, non-dilutive funding. So once you exhaust all of those, and then we got angel investment, but it was not easy. Like early day, just simply because you're unproven. And when even though you have years of working experience, day one, once you decided to be a founder, you're like, none of that counts. It's like completely reset. They don't care where you come from. As long as you never exited a company, to them, you're just unproven. So that's where I come from. So the fact that 8 years later, after so many know that we still exist, we're operating company, have a team of around 10 people, is not huge by any VC hockey growth stick measure. But each new team member added to the team, to me, is like a huge milestone. So that's kind of my journey. So yeah, like happy to take any question, anyone, if you have any.
Amazing. And yeah, people can put questions through it. I think we'll get through some of our thoughts and questions and then gather those at the end. But I think all of the panelists, I would say, hopefully, like Michelle, if people want to reach out on LinkedIn or by emails, to please do that. Thank you. So I'm hearing bravery and using your circumstances to your advantage. Sounds like great advice.
Great.
Ashni, you're a founder as well. So you started your business more recently. And it's interesting, Lily talked about engineering, and you've actually moved from software engineering into the world of self-employment and CEO, most recently launching Hype Docs. Can you tell us a bit about your experience and why it was important for you to become a founder?
Yeah, so I've had the honor and pleasure of working at some incredible tech companies over the last few years. And while I really enjoyed working at these companies, some part of me always knew I wanted to run my own business. And that turned into a startup because that's what tech companies or tech people do. at most of the companies I've worked at, the people have been great, but I've always felt the impact of being one of or the only woman or person of color at that company. Some of it was really subtle and, stuff that I could definitely shove to the side because it's unconscious biases. But some of it was really obvious, like being left out of conversations or being told I don't belong here, like actually have those words said to me. And my imposter syndrome started to grow, and I hated that feeling. A manager at one of the good companies, or one of the really good managers, I should say, that I worked with, recommended I start tracking my achievements in a list so that I could refer back to it at any point. And the impact that had on me, on my mental health, was incredible. So I joined the Foundry space last year after a few different wild life changes as a result of COVID. I'm sure many people can connect with that. And I've been so embedded in this founder space and connecting with nearly 100 female founders over the last year that I saw the exact same patterns start repeating themselves and the same issues popping up. Whether you're a woman questioning the value that you bring to a startup, if you should start your company, or the way that you might be treated by VCs. And a lot of the things that Lily has said are things that I've heard from many other people as well. And so while I originally joined the founder space to build another company, Taonga, which I'm still working on, I knew that I had to make Hype Docs, which is this tool that I'm building for people, to bring it out into the world to help founders, to help employees, to help students, to help any woman or person of color, underrepresented folk that keeps getting told you're not right or you don't belong here, to let you thrive, to let you own your voice in a way that makes sense to you. And I'm really fortunate that I'm a software engineer, so I've actually built out the entire thing myself. But the tools that we have available to us today means that you don't have to be a software engineer. That is no longer a blocker for you starting your own company. Instead, you just need to know how to Google a couple of things, watch a few YouTube videos, and you've got tools that cost $15, $20 a month, and you can get an entire website, a website that looks and feels like Airbnb, up and running in a couple of hours. That is insanely powerful. And looking at that as a software engineer who spent my life learning how to code kind of hurts, but I think it's so important. And for me personally, Hype Docs is something I'm building on top of my main venture. But the messages, the feedback, the responses that I keep getting, whether it's from the businesses we're working with or the individual customers, has been so overwhelmingly positive that it makes me want to continue moving forward and continue building in this space, even though it is more work for me. I think Lily mentioned she's a solo founder. I am as well. But it's that type of energy, it's that type of community that you become part of that really helps push me forward and want to be in the space and want to keep building.
Amazing. Thank you. And Jennifer, you purchased and started your business, Fit Squad, not long before the pandemic as well, a couple years before. What was your experience like as a woman co-founder and co-owner, and how has this changed the way that you work over this past year as well?
So I was personal training on my own. I was in the fashion industry prior to the recession. So got laid off during the recession and kind of fell back into what I knew. I was always an athlete growing up. So fitness was kind of like the next thing that I knew well and was comfortable with. So I started training kind of on my own and then taking on some part-time gigs, and was then offered an opportunity to take over what this was probably 10 years ago now, what originally was Fit Squad. Fit Squad was originally owned by an ex-military paratrooper. So I always describe him, and he's super sweet, but he, appears to look like Mr. Clean after, a fitness competition. So complete opposite of me. Here I am, young female Chinese girl, and I took over the company because I thought it was a great opportunity to do so. And I really hid behind a lot of that branding for, I would say, almost 2 years. It was very masculine. My face did not appear anywhere on the website. I was really shy to make the announcement or to make the change to let people know, our current members, as well as, just the public, to know that now I was the person running it. I thought that I would not be able to gain the same trust or respect. There wasn't at the time, one, Instagram, and two, there weren't a lot of females in this space that looked like me. So why would anyone trust me with, their health and well-being? But after some really strong encouragement from my girlfriend, she was like, you need to switch it over, because he doesn't even exist anymore in the company, and this is now your company. So I did that, and I think that the business definitely grew since then, because now I felt like this was something that I owned and I could take ownership of it, and it was authentically mine. I now have 2 male business partners who have been, extremely supportive, and having, just even in the last few years, seeing the misrepresentation of women in the health and fitness industry. I was working with a girlfriend of mine, and we were talking about how we weren't getting, any opportunities for campaigns or media opportunities. And we just weren't seeing ourselves in the space, represented in the space. There was an event that called for the top female fitness entrepreneurs in the industry, and there wasn't, a speck of color, which we felt was a misrepresentation of what was actually happening in Toronto. So we created a network called The Real Toronto. And it helps because in our minds, this is the real Toronto, the diverse women that do make up this space. So it's an opportunity for us to network, to meet. We've been in, conception was about 2 years ago. Things are a little bit on pause right now because of the pandemic, but we were able to build a very strong network so that now when brands are looking to, hire a yoga instructor or a strength coach, they know what network they can look to find that. Because a lot of it was just, lack of effort, or just, the convenience of just going with the same people to represent the entire industry. Now there's, no excuse for it, because we do exist now.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Thank you. We talked about, as we met as a pre-group, about sort of the push to women to go back to work early, for example, or to work when maybe you're dealing with other things at home, and certainly this fear of losing your job or your role if you don't head back to work early, for example, and not seeming committed enough, or not being able to stand up around your business. One of the interesting things is that even if you do, it's clear that women leaders are still not making the same as men as they go back. So Alex, turn this to you. As CEO of Cara and head of the media line of business at Dentsu, how are you thinking about women in leadership, pay equity, and the tools needed to succeed in business today? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I am. Hi. Sorry. I think what's interesting is, International Women's Day, we celebrate the strides that we've made. We've made several, but pay equity and gender equity is still a big one. And, I feel like as a woman, as I became, I will tell you, I found when I saw the gender equity, the gender misalignment or the gap was when I became the boss. And I remember the first time, I was, I think I was president or CEO of another company. And I remember looking at the numbers and saying, wow, like they're paying me significantly less than they paid the male that sat in the same role. So I'm a very firm advocate in all of our areas for just equal pay for equal work, right? You pay for the job, not the individual. And what women don't do as well as men, in my view, is they don't negotiate hard enough. They don't ask the questions like, what was the guy before me making? And am I making this? Like, you have to ask those questions going in. And if an organization doesn't tell you that, if they don't share that with you, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that they're one that I would want to work with. I would want to make sure that as I'm going to somewhere that that's the case. And then of course, if you're building a company, you are like, you have to make sure that you're, that you're looking at being as equitable as you can. The other thing that I think is slightly, important, I remember this really clearly. The money was one thing, but the other thing that I remember going through my career was access to the E-suite, the C-suite. And I remember it wasn't about leaning into meetings. I was always there in the meetings. Where I wasn't invited was the golf tournament or the going out for the drinks with the guys. And that was the part of being an executive leader that I clearly felt a really big difference. And so my network was smaller, my relationships with those levels was different. And, you know, I think with the team that I run now, I'm very, very cognizant of that. Like, I want to create space. I want to make sure they're at the table. I want to make sure that we're all we have a voice and we raise our hand. And as much as I see progress, which I think is amazing, there's still a tremendous amount of work to be done. And I think for me, the salary one is the most important thing. Whether you're raising money or whether you're in a company, you need to fight for that. And you need to have allies, people like me that can fight on your behalf, right? Your mentors, your people that have done it before that can kind of pave the way. What do they say? Lift as you rise, right? Lift as you create space as you. I think that's a critically important thing. The more we can do that for each other, the better off we'll all be.
Totally agree. Thank you. So let's pivot a little bit. This year has forced many of us, whether that be running businesses or even sort of in the office area, have to have different flexible work schedules, and in many cases work from home. Curious to hear from you about your experience, and have you noticed change in the interaction with your peers? So Kishana, I'm going to start with you. As founder of Women in Data Science, how have you navigated this work from home online world? And how has the pandemic, as well as the social topics in today's society, impacted you and sort of the way you show up?
Personally, I have a very welcoming workplace, so they've been really open to listening to changes and accommodations that I need during this time. One of the things I wanted to bring into the conversation, because I have some data, being from Women X in Data Science. So fewer than 1 in 3 Black women report that their manager has checked in on them in light of recent racial violence. And only about a third say their manager has fostered an inclusive culture on their team. 42% of Black women feel uncomfortable sharing their thoughts about racial equality at work, and 22% of Black women feel like they can't talk about the impact of current events on their community. So I'm a more vocal person at work, so I'm always willing to speak up. But I do know that there's people in my community, so friends, families, people who are part of Women in Data Science, who don't feel like they can speak up at work about everything that's going on racially motivated. And sometimes there's a expectation to always be on, always have your camera on, and to be smiling in these meetings. And it really goes a long way to just have the camera off, or to be allowed to have the camera off when you need a day. And I would say it's even extended to just when you're having a bad day. We've been locked inside for a long time now. So I'm pretty sure it could benefit a wide range of people. Also, since we're now digital, there could be a reduction in the amount of microaggressions experienced at work, because you might not experience it in the hallway. It might be in a Zoom meeting instead. But also there's more private conversations happening in Slack meetings. I meant Slack messages in the channels, or in Zoom meetings on the side that you'll never know about. So understanding what you're being excluded from is a missed opportunity now, because we're all working from home, or for those of us who are working from home. So I would say it's different terrain, but I think it's just small fixes that organizations can make in order to make their work from home policies more inclusive, and also to be sensitive around what people are going through as they work from home.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that concept of checking in on people too is a really important one. When we get into our silos of sitting at our computers in many cases, and forget that there's people at the end of all those conversations. So thank you. Alana, I'm going to move to you on that similar question. So this work from home experience, what has changed for you as a mom, as well as a CEO and founder of Moms TO? What has your experience been, and how can we sort of bring communities of support together to help other women?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I love being on this panel. I feel so honored to be with so many amazing women from a variety of industry. And thank you so much to Dentsu for today. Yeah, I'm Alana Capitz. I'm the founder of what was Moms Toronto. We just pivoted to the name Mom Halo. And our community is really about really supporting women through motherhood, but in a real like organic friendship type way. And what I've noticed since the pandemic and as sort of the CEO of like, you know, a lot of like mommy ecosystem space is that, you know, I'm hearing a lot from my community. I think, you know, what's happened with the pivot toward a more virtual space in work is that for a lot of women, they've actually found it to be quite liberating in a lot of ways. But that is obviously coupled with sort of the reality of the mental load of motherhood that is now 100% personified and magnified through the mother's experience. And I'll give two examples. One of which is sort of this new reality where like maybe in a potential work environment, you were showing up with the expectation of being at some sort of like stand up or something that was at like 7 a.m. That's totally unachievable for a family dynamic, or the expectation to, you know, sort of clock evening and weekend work hours, when perhaps now the work from home scenario has freed up a lot of people's ability to sort of make work for them, which has kind of been nice that I'm hearing. I've also heard and seen firsthand that a lot of people are accounting, parents specifically, that with sort of everybody working from home with the family, especially when people's kids were home at the beginning of last year, at the end of last year, I should say, sort of that March to June when schools were really off. And then again, in more recent months, was that often people who are in a partnered situation were having aha moments, understanding, oh, wow, there is so much happening on the woman's plate, on the mother's plate of sort of managing all of these moving pieces, but still finding that often the male in the households time, calendar, and work from home does still take precedent over women and moms who are sort of kind of expected to leave the workforce. And we've seen an unprecedented amount of people who have actually left their jobs to have to manage the workload of raising children and doing homeschooling. You know, today's International Women's Day. I've been having a conversation literally for like 5 days about this already. But what I'm seeing is people sort of now looking back with sort of, you know, 10,000 feet above the experience that has been COVID, and trying to sort of see those moments that are sort of the silver lining of parenting through these times. And what I'm hearing is that people have found joy actually in seeing their kids, right? And getting to be part of those moments, those sweet cookies that perhaps they would have missed otherwise. For a lot of people being home, having access to spouses or husbands who are typically maybe unavailable in the family unit. And for a lot of women, they did actually leave the workforce, but many women decided to start their own businesses. So our particular demographic is quite young moms, even though we're expanding to reach sort of different vintages of parenthood. And that means everything from expecting parents to solo parents and parents of who might already be grandparents, et cetera. But for that sort of younger Canadian mom who is really going through first time or second time parenthood, and they were on maternity leave, that they decided actually not to return to the workforce at all, and instead have pivoted to really entrepreneurship. So, you know, those are really the systems that I'm seeing, and really seeing through my community the highlight of the need for community, whether or not that's your tribe of your friendships or your family, but really moms feeling like pretty isolated and alone, not only in the trials and tribulations of motherhood, but that sort of magnified with no longer the elephant in the room, but this magnification of COVID, the overlay. And then we also take that with sort of the advent, you know, the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, sort of bringing into focus sort of sexism, racism, and to be honest, like that we have come obviously a very long way with a lot of things, but there is so much more to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So on that, you mentioned women, some cases leaving the workforce. I wanted to talk a little bit about that and dig a bit deeper with our panelists. with all this in mind, we know the future of work is changing, and women may be either looking for new opportunities when they look to sort of come back to the workforce, or for different opportunities, or to start something all on their own in the workforce, like some of our founders have here. How can women prepare for the future, and how do we reverse those negative impacts that COVID have created? So Kshana, I'm going to go back to you, because women data science focuses on digital literacy for women, as well as the diversification of the talent pool in data and through your programs. What has this year meant to your business? And have you seen an uptick in women seeking out some of those new and digital skills?
So at the beginning, we were kind of taken aback because usually we're an in-person event. And we were like, okay, we don't know how to do this and we don't want to do it wrong. So we took a moment to be like, okay, what does our community need? And now we've actually planned out virtual programming for the whole year. So we have a conference that's coming up on April 28th and 29th. We have a datathon in the fall. We also have online courses that we're launching. So we're noticing that there's more women who are interested in obtaining data skills. And that doesn't necessarily mean you want to be a data scientist. It doesn't mean you want to be a data analyst, but you want some form of foundational skills in data. It could be just even understanding like the ethics of AI and how it impacts you in your world. So a stat is like 15% of data scientists are women. That's super, super low. And especially with the way that everything's advancing with the pandemic and people looking into doing things more remotely, if we don't upskill women to have a foundational understanding of data, they risk being left behind, right? So we do have a pledge to have 1 million women to be data literate, and that's what we're planning to do with our programming over the next few years. So it's good for everyone. It's not just like a good thing to do, like it's good for women to be data literate, whether or not they're in data professions. So we've definitely seen an uptick in more interest to pivot into data either as a career or just to have as foundational knowledge.
And Alex, you're very involved in coaching and boards and mentorship. How are you coaching women at Dentsu, as well as across sort of the boards that you are a part of, to become digitally skilled for the future and to expand their experiences and their sphere of influence?
Look, I agree with the sentiment. Life is all about, careers are all about lifelong learning, and particularly in the industry that I'm in. You need to constantly be thinking about, both the now and the next. The challenge, I think, during COVID, really for many of the women that I work with, or they had kind of almost two gas pedals, right? They had the work gas pedal, and then they had the life gas pedal, and you can't push both at the same time. And the hard thing about training is it does take work and time. And so sometimes what I say to women is, okay, if you don't have time at this moment to take the course, do a little bit of reading. Start every single day by learning something small. It doesn't have to be like the boil the ocean kind of but you need to kind of, there are a couple of things that, you could just do at 9 o'clock at night before you go to bed, or early in the morning when the kids are, right? Just to kind of give yourself that moment to learn. I know, my stage, my age, I do that constantly. So in addition to taking courses, which I try to balance out, I am always kind of like, okay, what do I need? What do I want to learn? And then the other thing that I say to women is like, use the power of your social media to actually put yourself out there, learn something and then share it on LinkedIn, or to, like make yourself, and I think once you're kind of more comfortable sort of taking things like data and saying, yeah, I read this great article and I think this is amazing, put it out there, all of a sudden, you get that back, because then people will send stuff to you, and then you'll start to be more aware. I think those are some of the things that, at a time of really challenging work-life balance, no balance, like work-life, right? Finding small ways to get those incremental learnings, I think is really important.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to go back to some of our founders here. So Ashley and Lily, I'll ask this question to both of you. What advice do you have for women entrepreneurs, either launching or maintaining a startup in today's economy, knowing so much has changed? I guess Ashley, or Lily. Sorry,
Oh,
Lily,
yeah.
Lily first.
No worries. I think apply the strategy how you manage your inflow and outflow of cash, right? So I think I think women are usually in general very resourceful, and we're good at self-control, and just watch where you're spending when it comes to the business, right? Like anything unnecessary, try to cut back, just don't spend more. In general, I think just look at your staffing need, like anything that you potentially need to hire, you might need to put a pause for now, and then evaluate who is like kind of like which area that you can kind of cut back, right? So we're fortunate in a way that because the offices is with the incubator, and they kind of don't require us to continue the lease, so we are able to don't need to commit to that. A lot of company unfortunately don't have that option, so I would try to see if you can anything you can get out of agreement, like kind of get out of it. In general, I would say the other thing is look at revenue opening, new revenue stream opportunity. So for us, we originally, before COVID, our beauty box is not kind of the mainstream of revenue, like always kind of like a side revenue. It's still kind of side, but during the COVID time, when Amazon was having issue even delivery, so that was definitely opportunity for us. The beauty box actually done much better, and then slowly also observe how your B2B client are adapting. So a lot of our skincare client, obviously no one care about that anymore, but a lot of them are pivoting, making like hand sanitizer, making hand soap, and then so we step in and kind of pay, what can we do to help you promote that? So we pivot some of the business that way. So I think keep adapting, and see if there's new interesting revenue opportunity that you might not have seen. I think with COVID, also another opportunity is people are extremely bored, and some of them, anyone who are not affected, that they still have job, like for example people in the tech sector and whatnot, they still have income, they still want to spend money. You just need to find a creative way to capture that. What can you do to tackle the boredom economy? I can't remember where I saw that, maybe on The Economist or something. So people still want to spend money to kind of kill boredom, and anyone who can do that, for example, I see actually the fitness and training industry, because in the past the gym kind of like the center where everything is, but now everyone kind of just stay at home, so they still want to support, their favorite trainer. I mean myself too, I mean I look at my hairdresser, the salon I love to go. I don't want to go out of I don't want it go out of business. By the time when it open, I cannot go back. So as a small company, what can you do to let your most loyal fan to continue support you and giving value to them? I think that's where opportunity can think and innovate and kind of adapt and survive.
Awesome. Ashley, any thoughts?
Yeah, loved everything said so far. I could probably go on for ages, so I'll keep this short. This is specifically to any women any person who's held yourself back because you don't think you've got the technical skills to build your product. There are so many tools out there, Airtable, Zapier, Bubble, like go out there, learn about these no-code tools and start building with them. Alex touched on this, and if you feel like you don't have enough time to do everything now, it's okay. COVID has put us all in unprecedented situations, so make sure you're prioritizing yourself. But find ways to set goals for yourself so that you can achieve this work-life balance, but still make small steps and eventually bigger steps towards starting this. So, maybe that goal is learn about a no-code tool over the next 3 months and start playing around with something. And In 3 months, it might be a better time, or in 3 years, whatever it is, start learning, because that's the only way you're going to build momentum. Alana made a really great point on talking about community and building a community around you. I think part of my successes in the last 5-10 years have really come from having really strong, solid accountability groups around me. We each have so many labels for ourselves. For example, I'm a founder, I'm a student, I'm a woman, and I'm not a mother, but I know Alana spent a lot of time talking about mothers on here. So whatever titles you identify yourself as, find a community of people and an accountability group, essentially, that you can take advantage of, and take advantage of the fact that we're all remote, so you can really connect with anyone in the world. And as you get support from them, remember that you're both lifting each other up. And then this is my final one. When you think something is going wrong, leverage the community around you to ask for help. It's only a failure if you let it be a failure, if you don't learn from it. And this last part is totally not product placement, but keep track of your wins. And anytime you feel like you're hitting a roadblock or you feel like you're struggling, take a look at that list. Whether you're using Hype Docs or you're using a spreadsheet or a book, like a journal on the side of your bed, keep track of those wins. You'd be amazed at how many things you rack up in even a couple of weeks. So yeah, go out there and be your best self.
That's amazing. Thank you. You talked a lot about community, and I'll sort of lead to our final question. And I'll start with Alana and then Jennifer, but everyone feel free to pipe in after too. I think a network can be very hard to find at the various stages of your career. And now with so many women impacted in the labor force, it seems more important than ever to surround yourself with like-minded people. And as you mentioned, Ashley, around sort of creating that level of accountability. How important is a community to you? And how have you been supported in your careers by other women? And so those communities. So Alana, I'll start with you. As an entrepreneur, you've obviously built sustainable networks around you. What has this meant to your business, and what are you hearing from those in your community?
So look, it's a kind of lame saying, but your network is your net worth. It's all I have. It's literally the capital in which it's my commerce. That's how I trade, is in networking. And I put that out to everyone here. I think really what they have in of new social platforms like a Clubhouse, which obviously has inherent flaws, but generally understanding that like the network and your community matters. And I think that we have to come from a place of abundance, and women really need to lift each other up. And I'm so inspired by some of the women on this call. I do think it's so funny. I think it was Kashana who just said like the intersections of the intersectionality of our identities and the way in which we label oneself is so unique. And it's interesting, like when I think about motherhood, I belong to so many mom communities, and the one that really lifts me up, brings me joy, fills my cup is one in which like it is a community of entrepreneurial moms, ones who, and I actually find the language quite jarring around like mompreneur and all those sorts of things that I kind of find actually as a semiotic and as a linguistics person, as a communications person, as a woman studies feminist, I actually grapple so hard with some of these definitions that have become sort of the vernacular. Obviously, it's that paradigm of your identity where like, it's just sexism. Like, women often define themselves, especially in motherhood, through the relationship to others versus the relation to themselves. So for me, it's interesting to grapple with those conversations with the like-minded women who happen to also be mothers. I don't believe in essentialism. I don't think we're all essentially the same, but I do believe that grappling with the trials and tribulations of the hood of motherhood does present a very unique community of women who are really, frankly, there to lift each other up. So I encourage people to find their network and to give to it, like give 10%, whether or not that's charitable of your time or your money or your knowledge, just give it away. That's what I say. Like I will take a call with almost anybody if they want to pick my brain about community building, social media, motherhood, any of my thoughts. I'm happy to sort of give away the information because that's the really only way that we can really, our stock will increase, right? That clout will increase. So If you don't have a network, now is a great time to try to build one. Communities like this that you guys have created through Dentsu is a beautiful opportunity. I cannot wait to follow up with some of these panelists that you've brought together, because I think any opportunity in which people have a shared sort of mission or goal is a great opportunity to connect and bring value. Yeah, sustainable networks are crucial, and the way that you sustain that is by feeding it, right? And the way you feed that is by being conversational. So I believe in a 1-to-4 ratio, which is you give, take. Give, take. And that's how I sort of have built my network. And I rarely take, but when I do, I don't feel bad about that, right? There's no guilt there at all.
Absolutely. I think each of my 3 children are my gives.
Give, yeah.
Take the rest of you.
You know the deal, Sarah, yeah.
Jennifer, what about you? You mentioned sort of Real Toronto and partnering with someone else to do that. Can you talk a little bit about network building and maybe some thoughts about how people can go about doing that?
Absolutely. I think it's just, conversations, like starting the conversation, not being too shy about it, because we always want to appear like we're tough and like nothing phases us and we can, plow through things. And there's so much pride and ego driven kind of mentality that it really took us to like leave all that stuff aside and, start the conversations and realize so many people were feeling the same way. Being able to connect with other women in our industry has been quite amazing. It's been super fulfilling. It's just, if, for example, if brands are only hiring certain professionals because they have so many likes on Instagram or so many followers on Instagram, but we're not giving that kind of, social media love to each other, because, it's sometimes so much about competition because we're all vying for that one spot, that like one, BIPOC role that they want to fill, that, we're not going to be able to lift each other up that way. So I think it's important that we were able to confidently do that and not think that doing that takes away, like your win does not take away from me. So your win is my win, as opposed to your win is my loss. With regards to what's been going on during COVID, I created the Safe Health and Wellness Coalition, and it was to support small businesses in our industry. And all of a sudden, everyone that was our competition in the industry has now become our ally, because COVID has become this complete equalizer for us in the entire industry. We're all fighting for the same things now: rent subsidy, wage subsidy. We're all feeling it. We're doing virtual platforms, and now it's how do we collaborate and how do we support each other? Like, what is working for you for virtual? What rates are you charging so that I can charge the same, so we can keep the same level of value to our members and to the community? It's just those. It's really humbling to be in that position, because so often we work in our own silos and we're so focused as, business owners and entrepreneurs about what's exactly in front of us, that we forget that we have people that are going through the exact same thing. And it took the pandemic to bring us to this. So it's, community is definitely something that's definitely helped us get through. It's part of our defense as to, how to get through the pandemic, and just as small business owners in general.
And you know what, I'm just going to jump in here because I think there's 2 things you said that I just want to comment on. The first one is that notion of community is something that you should do at every stage of your career. Like I do it I have a little group called Women with Wine, and we met consistently. Some of the women in this group were part of it. We met consistently during COVID, and I just wanted to meet with people just to get their perspective, because I was feeling down and I needed it. But the other thing that Jennifer just said that I love is this idea of just reminding ourselves of the fact that, the world is filled with, don't hate me for saying this, many mediocre men. And sometimes we talk about, not being able to support incredible women because there's only one space. And so it creates this competition. That's bullshit. Like, let's just support as many, like I would rather have an exceptional, workforce of incredibly smart women that are supporting each other than the opposite. And I think that's one of the things I think as a generation, we have come a long way. And, and then like the other thing on the community side is that, work is like about chapters, right? And you're not going to always be in the place where you can do everything, but make sure you have a plan make sure you have a network, a community of people that you can push and inspire you. And then finally, don't forget about building skill. Like it's so, and support each other. Like, yay. I love that. I love what Alana said. Take. That's my new mantra.
Amazing. We have a few minutes left, and there's a question that's come in, so I'll put this out to each of you. But as sort of a closing thought, what's inspiring you today? You know, in the face of so much hardship and the barriers that we've talked about as women professionally, what is getting you jazzed? Anyone want to take that? I'll call on people if you don't want to.
I'm happy to add a little bit on that. I think one of the things that definitely inspires me is the fact that I get to work on things that I care about, and I get to own what that story looks like. But I think one of the things that for me has been really powerful over the last year is that I am connecting with so many more women that are joining the space, and that so many women are becoming founders. And so whether it's my story that's getting told, or it's one of the, many other women's stories that I'm able to support as we are all coming up, that's really inspiring for me. And then one of the other parts for me is I've had this mission for years, especially because I was born and grew up in Kenya, and in Kenya there's a lot of poverty, and it's always been a big part of our life, is to build as much as we can and to give back as much as we can. And so for me, I've always tried to find ways that I could build a better tomorrow with the technology that I have. And it's inspiring to see the tools that people have been building and to see the impact that Hype Docs has been having. So I think finding passion in the work that you're doing is a lot of it for me as well.
Yeah, I can jump in to say something too. I think for me, like many other women, when they were working, they definitely felt underappreciated, underestimated. So I think the satisfaction for me that inspires me every day is whether I do put something to the world, whether it's success or fail, is like no one can take it away from me. Like 100% own that success or failure. You don't have to worry about being, people kind of don't share the credit with you. And the fact that, to echo what Ashini talked about, I think a lot of women founder their business usually about kind of things that women customer or women audience care. Just the fact that keeping your company alive, you're serving the audience that you really want them to beneficial to your product. And again, traditionally, actually, I think back to the link that you share with us in the panel notes, and a lot of women founded company in general, they hire more diverse team, and just the ability to become still the key decision maker. Every hire, you have full decision making ability, whether you bring this talent on board or not, and just firsthand implementing some of the strategy in your mind that you think could be more equitable. I mean, kind of like what Alex talked about a little bit. I know about the pay gap and whatnot, but you don't know until you're on this side, the employer's chair, when you see two equally junior staff, one young man, one young woman, whatever they first ask, the young man, even completely no experience, they will still ask for way more. And I get back to the point I actually want to share a bit about is I find in the media a lot of these kind of things saying about the confidence gap, saying that women lack confidence, we need to build confidence. I really don't feel that way. I think I met a lot of capable, confident women on aboard. I really find the issue is men are overconfident. So when confident women versus overconfident men, then you compare to we lack of confidence. I think women project what is realistic, we're optimistically realistic, versus unrealistically optimistic. Those are two different scenarios. So we pitch what we think is kind of realistically achievable versus compared to overconfident men, they just like exaggeration. So when, as the VC side of things, when you're used to watching exaggeration, when you listen realistic projection, she is not confident, which I completely disagree, because I have seen early days a lot of guys pitch around me, none of their business survive because they're all exaggeration. There's no basis, there's no sources, there's no real fact figure to back you up. So I think there's a lot to be said here is like how we evaluate women. Are we evaluating them based on the outdated standard to judge overconfident men, or you evaluate them based on who they are? Don't use the standard you judge overconfident men to judge capable, confident women. So that's kind of one thing I just want to share. I just don't like when they say that there's a confidence gap. Like every woman founder, I know they're confident. They don't want to overdo it, because once you overdo it, the flip side becomes she's arrogant. So we always walk this ridiculous fine line of be a certain way, not too much, and extremely self-aware. When you put in that frame, unfortunately, then you kind of don't shine as bright as the guy who extremely exaggerating next to you.
Thank you,
Good.
Sean.
Oh,
Yeah, go.
I would say for me, like what gets me really excited during this time is during the pandemic. I guess we're still going through it. But because the whole world stopped, like I actually had time to sit down. So like before, it used to be like after work, I would be going to events. I'd always be doing side things. And I actually had time to like sit down and like finish writing a book that I was writing. So I finished writing it, I published it. And also just like what else gets me really excited is knowing that there's so many people actually doing the work. So that even though everything is moving to be virtual, like there's still ways to connect and to uplift people. Those are the things that get me excited. So I try to look on the plus side.
And I think another shameless tooting, plugging of the horn, Hibiscus, your book and your poetry. I think everyone should go get it. Not on Amazon, it takes too long, but we can find a way to. It's, I'm really excited to read it. And I think that's a really great point, sort of leaning into your passions and using your time in that way. Any other parting thoughts?
May I say something? Oh, go ahead, Alex. I was just going to say what fills my cup right now is seeing innovation, like watching women pivot hard into different things and like leaning into their dreams a bit, right? And what I kind of heard Lily say, which I agree with, is like COVID sort of accelerated stuff. If you were going to fail, you just failed 5 years faster. If you had an idea that was like sort of percolating, now was the time to lean into writing a book or launching your product or whatever it is. So COVID was sort of that acceleration for a lot of people. If a company was going to fold, maybe it folded sooner than perhaps it would, and it only was going to last a certain amount of time. So lean into that like voice in your head that's telling you to do something, to take the leap, to make the jump, to launch the brand or whatever. And last but not least, this might sound super lame, but like I'm leaning hard into making sure that I recognize my privilege in the world and lending my power for good. So we have a huge campaign right now where like what makes me feel good right now is that we're trying to raise $1 million for Sick Kids Hospital. So that is obviously a personal mission, but also now a professional mission. So just like doing acts of radical generosity is like really filling me up. Additionally is leaning into new platforms like Clubhouse. I'm going to be a total nerd and say that like I'm lapping up Clubhouse. I've been on it since November. I had to take a pretty large hiatus, but I find like it is really a community that's really beautiful and nice and sweet and kind. And the feminine energy is anyone who identifies as a woman. It's like a very nice place to make connections on a very global setting. So don't be scared of those sorts of things. And if anyone wants a Clubhouse invite, I'll just put it out there. I have a bunch that I'm sitting on. I'm happy to share it with you, but it is only for iPhone users. And that obviously cuts off half the world, but hopefully they'll get there one day. And thanks again, Dentsu, for hosting this awesome event.
Thank you. And thank you to each of you for being on this panel. I talked about it at the outset, but it's critical for women to create this community of listening and sharing and collaborating. and resources. And all of you bring a really different perspective to that, and really how we start to move things forward for us as women. It's these conversations and support that are going to propel us to a more gender equal world and really create conditions for economic equality. So I encourage anyone of the attendees to please reach out to our panelists. And if you don't have their information and you can't find them on LinkedIn, please send me a note at sarah.armstrong@dentsu.com, Sarah with an H. I'd be happy to make those connections for you, because again, it's important to keep those conversations going. So thank you to all our panelists for taking time out of your busy day. This has been awesome. And I'm grateful for all that you've shared today, and just being around you. It's been inspiring. So thank you so much.
Oh my God, I wrote down so many things. Jen, when she said, your win is my win, your win is not my loss. Love it. Like, more space for everyone. Lily, we are realistically optimistic versus optimistically unrealistic. Loved it. Like, I'm getting all these t-shirts made to just put it up. Kashana, bought your book. It's being delivered as we speak. I cannot wait, and we'll share the link. So thank you everyone for your time and your energy. The 4-to-1 ratio, give, but make sure you take. I think that's one of the biggest pieces for me as a woman. I so often don't ask. And I think that's really important too. So thank you. All right, we're just waiting on Dawn to join us. Helen, I see you're here.
Yeah. I wanted to, I just wanted one thing I think that Elena said, and I really wanted to kind of, what was it? The power of your network is your net worth, Elena. So I just wanted to, like, I realized this year ended up being the reason I can survive, the reason I can be strong, the reason we are even doing all this is because of that network. And it was, I could reach out to anyone and be like, please support, and like, what's going on. And, you know, seeing Ashni, who's one of my past students, seeing Kashana, you know, seeing Lily, you know, when we used to be doing trade shows together. And so it does come full circle that we all lift each other. And I think this is where I'm just really proud of the whole panel, but I'm also, I love the feedback we're getting from our attendees. Kate, I think you're introducing.
I think you are, Helen.
Oh, am I? Oh.
I can introduce.
Go for it.
Well, I'm also trying to toggle with the sharing my screen. So Dawn, we will get your presentation up shortly.
But sure, you know what, it doesn't matter. It's just, whatever.
You'll start speaking, and I'll start sharing, Dawn.
All right.
But to everyone, to our attendees, we want to formally welcome Dawn. RBC is a client of Dentsu, and Dawn is someone that I just recently met and was introduced. I admittedly have stalked her on LinkedIn for a little bit because Dawn shares really interesting and thought-provoking reports. So Dawn, I know you originally joined Royal Bank in 2006 as a senior economist, but now you're the VP, Deputy Chief Economist, and you're responsible for a lot of the macroeconomic and interest rate forecasts for Canada and the US. And so we're very excited for you today. You're an experienced speaker as a former Bloomberg financial news anchor. So we're happy to have you, and I'll get my screen up soon.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thanks,
joining.
Kate. No problem at all. So my presentation is a little different. I really enjoyed listening to all these incredible women and all of their experiences, and just some of the things they've had to overcome, but also their words of wisdom and encouragement. And so I don't want to be like, you know, the lead balloon, but I do our research over time since COVID began. Now we've been looking at women in the labor market for many years. International Women's Day, and happy International Women's Day to everyone. Sort of was always our sort of we put that in our calendar as a time to think about how women are performing in the labor market. And a year ago, we put out a report which was really lauding all the achievements of women. The fact that we had seen a sustained pickup in the participation rate, that we had seen women increasingly contributing to household income, accounting for 42% of household income, so up from 25. So just like really doing well. Also getting a lot more secure in terms of their finances and really potentially pulling many women out of poverty when they retired. So of course that went out, I think, on March 2nd, and then COVID-19 hit the economy, and women were, initially of the close to 3 million jobs that were lost through March and April of last year, 51% of those job losses were women who were out of work. And so we did see an improvement over time. We certainly saw the economy start to reopen. Remember that we were locked down completely, then the economy started to reopen, and we did see both men and women coming back to the labor force. So that 30-year low that Sarah mentioned earlier in terms of women's participation rate, it did come back a bit. Though it still remains almost the lowest in 20 years. So, some improvement, but still pretty dire situation. And then we hit the second lockdown, and we did see women lose their jobs. And so as of January, the data isn't all that encouraging. I mean, in some ways, from close to 3 million jobs lost to 860,000 jobs lost, that does seem like an improvement. But unfortunately, the scales have tipped against women, and 56% of those jobs that have been lost had been performed by women. And I think another couple of facts that we really just, think are important for people to know about. One is that about more than 200,000 women are now in what we call long-term unemployment. And that means that you haven't been working for over half a year. And that's, of course, important because, as we are unemployed for a longer period of time, our skills, they deteriorate a little bit over time, and our networks start to break down. So these are women we really think we have to keep our eyes on. The other fact that is really disturbing is that we've seen 100,000 women leave the labor force completely. And that's about 10 times the number of men that we've seen in the data. So we try to think about why would this be? Well, first of all, when we look at the industries women work in, some of these industries are the ones that have been most significantly hurt by COVID-19. They're the ones that we have to be in close proximity with each other. And therefore, they've been hit harder as we had to lock down and have social distancing. And the recovery for these industries is going to be much slower. So when we think about it, it does make sense. Now, women also work in healthcare, they work in education. And in those cases, of course, jobs have been recreated and we're on good solid footing. But when you look at food and accommodation and retail, both those industries, more than the 50% of the people working in them are women. And these women are the ones where we are seeing sustained job losses. Now, the other factor we identified was the fact that a lot of these women are at the low end of the wage scale. They're working in these service sector industries. And so when you look across each cohort of earnings, all of the job losses are at the lower end. Now, women who are working at the higher end of the pay grade, those women have actually seen their employment increase. And some of the reasons, of course, because these women, have more education, they have the ability to work from home, and so they have been able to do so. But other women, lower educated in terms of whether there's high school achievement or not even high school achievement, those women are the ones that have tended to be the ones that are losing their jobs. And when we've looked at it across ages, it really was spread out, but for sure, what we saw was the largest decline came in young women 20 to 24 years of age. They make up about 2.5% of the labor force, and they are bearing the brunt of 17% of the job losses. So this is obviously, you know, very, very concerning. And then we looked at it in terms of minorities. And what did we see there? Well, when we looked at the employment gap, so women had already been underperforming overall, but then people who are, you know, identify as visible minorities, they have had an even more severe pullback in terms of their employment. So there's a lot of factors at work here when we're thinking about, you know, what's happening for women in the labor market. I would say, you know, that first factor being it's just where they work and what wage scales they're at. Now, the second factor that we think about in terms of the factor is of course, childcare. And I think earlier panelists very much discussing that. You know, when we look at the data, it showed that women with small children have been disproportionately hit. We looked at women who had children and women who didn't, women who had children and men who had children. And no matter what metric we looked at, it was always these women who had smaller children who have been under the most significant pressure. So definitely it has been the case that we've seen a certain change in terms of our labor market. And so we have to think about what's next. Now, as an economist, you know, I fully expect that as we see more people getting vaccinated, as we see the ability of some of these service sector areas of our economy, they're going to be able to reopen. So that's going to be good news, and that's going to pull some of these women back into the labor market, we have no doubt. But I don't think all jobs are going to be recreated. I think there's a few factors here. One, I don't know that all firms are going to make it to the other side. Some of these companies have been out of business or couldn't fully operate for a year at a minimum. So that's concerning. How many will not make it to the other side? And the other factor is that we have seen structural changes in our economy. We think about e-commerce. You know, a year ago, people were definitely transacting online, but since COVID-19, that we've seen that part of our economy grow exponentially. So some of the people who may have been in a retail store, there may not be a job for them because that retailer may have pivoted and will be doing more of their business online. So they might need people in their fulfillment center, but they might not necessarily need people to be working you know, in front of clients. So we're trying to think about things that, you know, what are the factors or what can we do as businesses? What can we do? What can the government be expected to do to help these workers re-engage in the labor market? And certainly some of the work we've done in the past, you know, we were looking at this change in our economy, how automation was going to impact employment across the board. And what we determined in an earlier study is that of the jobs that were most at risk of automation, 54% of those jobs were being performed by women. So this was already something we had on our radar screen. So we thought of it in the context of, you know, how are these women going to be able to pivot and get into the new economy? And I think some of it reflects what we were talking about earlier with the digital skills. You know, these are definitely skills of the future. Jobs are going to all require some level of digital literacy. So you know, that's certainly an important factor. But the other thing we determined was that the jobs women were performing, they already have skills that could be transferred into other industries. But what it will take is some training. You know, we think about the government's pledge to have a new childcare system, a national more accessible childcare system, more affordable. Well, that's going to require people to work in that industry. So we think about some of those foundational skills that people have. They're going to need some training, and the government has already announced allocating money towards the provinces to create these training budgets. That will get them. So they have the foundational skills. You just got to build in that next piece. And this will be key to ensure that, you know, all women get back to work after we get through this pandemic. Because as we said earlier, you know, 500,000 women are still on the sidelines. And we also think that more flexible arrangements for work are going to be key to re-engage these women, to keep them working, to allow them to come back in some cases, to re-enter that labor force. And of course, as we have heard, childcare is definitely key. We look back to the Quebec experience. In Quebec in 1998, they started their childcare program. And at that time, women in Quebec, their participation rate, and these are, the prime age workers, so 25 to 54 years old, their participation rate in the labor market was below the national average. It was about 74%. But fast forward 20 years, that participation rate eclipsed the national average at 87%. So definitely we know that these programs can support engagement of women in the labor market. So just to end on, why is it important? Well, there's a few factors. One is that as a society, Canada's aging, and we definitely need all hands on deck in terms of growing our labor force, because a growing labor force helps our economy expand and it helps our standard of living. The one factor I'd like to leave you with is when we think about participation in the labor market, we've done a bunch of an analytics on it, and what we've discovered is that if women participated at the same rate as men in the labor market, that would add $100 billion to Canada's economy every year. So basically, the message is it's in everyone's interest to get women participating in the labor market. It will drive economic growth and it will drive prosperity right across the economy. So Kate, I'm not sure if anyone has any questions about this. Certainly, you should feel free to send along that slide deck, just if people have an interest in looking at the charts. I've also put in the back the links to these papers we've written since the pandemic hit. Our website has lots more on women over time, but just thinking about our experience during this last year, we have those papers linked in that as well.
Yes, thank you, Dawn, and we will make sure to share those out in our wrap email. But thank you so much. I mean, it's crazy that we are in the 21st century and we still share the same stats. It makes great business sense, and we're still not seeing the progress that we need. So I'm emboldened and empowered to continue to use, my voice to do what I can to make a change too.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that got me is, you realize that it's impacting very young women. You're hearing from your stats, and the question is, how do we, especially when we are hiring interns and we're hiring co-ops and we're hiring a lot of women to be part of our startup, but also just, give them the experience. That how much is that happening across industries, and especially when we know we need more, because they're going to be falling behind, and they're going to be falling behind by years and decades. And we've worked so hard. So that was a very interesting part. Another part that was interesting was this 100. Okay, here we go. 100 billion. I wrote that down. There we go. Sorry for I'll put on my forehead. $100 billion. We are worth a lot. And I don't think that message is coming out. And I know RBC's been doing a great job on promoting. When I saw the stats when they first came out, I saw John Stackhouse really promoting it and saying, look what's going on. I think there's a lot of, I don't know if they really know that. I don't know if this younger, younger teens and women in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, and everyone knows that they are worth a lot. And I think that was very inspirational to me to see that.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, when we think about those internships and all those different programs, RBC has had in place something called Future Launch for quite some time. And it's just to give people experience. And, I think in many cases it does end up transitioning into a position, but it's no guarantee. But having developed those skills through a variety of different departments, it just gives you that lift. And so it gives you a little bit more when you're trying to apply for different jobs. It may not be the industry for you. We all make changes during our lives, but at least you get that foundational base of skills. And I'm sure that's what you're saying with your company as well. It's just giving people that lift.
Yeah.
I think sorry, go for it, Kate.
No, I was trying to say it's funny that Michelle said the same thing. Sometimes listen to your gut, be open to change, and sometimes the gift is in the pivot. And I think I've learned that so many times in my career, and the gift is in the pivot, and that's not a bad thing. It can very much be a positive.
Kate, I was about to say the exact same thing. Gift is in the pivot. Oh, I was like putting it together.
We're gonna have swag coming out of this week. T-shirts for all.
Actually, Dawn, we did have one question come in from Susan. She asks, have you done any comparisons of how women in Canada have fared throughout the pandemic compared to those in other countries?
You know, we try to, and it's tricky because each country has their own support programs put in place during COVID-19. So when we're looking at some of the statistics for women, you know, and these levers of the labor force in some countries, you know, there were programs in place that kept you connected to the labor force. Now you may not be working and you may otherwise have been out. So we did try that, and unfortunately, we couldn't really, until we see those programs dissipate, that's when we think we'll kind of understand the true lay of the land for women, because you won't all be having different incentives either to stay in the labor market or to get out. So we did try, we were just not that successful.
So again, I really want to thank you, Dawn, for joining us today. I mean, I think we'll share everything with the audience, of course, but I think this is really something that we need to put numbers, we need to put facts, and we need to put passion together. That's what we need to do. Because if we don't understand that, then we're just kind of going in the dark and saying, oh, let's just empower people. The reality is there are numbers we need to start increasing and we need to go after. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Awesome.
Bye.
So I think we're, you know, coming to the end of the day of International Women's Day, and doing this with amazing women, and two amazing women, Kate and Sarah. Thank you so much for, you know, putting such an amazing day together. But it's not the end. It's only the day one of day 5. Yeah, because or day 4, or I don't know what day it is, but all I know is at the end of the day, I think it's been amazing. We've heard a lot of opinions and we really want to continue the conversation. So tomorrow we have a special guest, Takara Small, who's a CBC of Technology journalist and founder of Venture Kids. I've known Takara for a while and she's always leading the way, and you can see her on TV. So this is why she's really leading, I would say, a leading voice in tech, but a leading voice for education, especially with Venture Kids. Going with an education theme and the thought of how we're working in the future is the Future of Work panel, which will have Melissa Serafdeen, and we'll have Melissa Kartik and Jeffrey Yateman, Carolyn Purcell, Jeff Greenspoon, and Takara Small. So we have a great panel on Future of Work and an amazing panel about the challenges of funding women-led technology companies. Oh, do I know this panel? And we're going to hear some amazing things from some VCs I do know, Danielle Graham, Althea Wishloff, Stephanie Lapierre, and it's moderated by Tom Strodback from Global Growth Hub. So we have a lot to do tomorrow as well. Like, I think we've got a lot to do, guys. So I'm pretty excited about tomorrow. Please join us again. And I think it's going to be, we should be 12 o'clock sharp, like, you know, 12:15 sharp. We should be starting off the day. So thank you again. Kate, Sarah, any last words you want to put out there?
Claiming your power and parking your fears.
My only comment is I look forward to being able to write all of these different points down tomorrow and then sharing them all at the dinner table with my family, because I think they're really inspiring. It's been a great day. So I'm looking forward to these 5 days, but the 5 after that and the 5 after that, and, you know, forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon, everyone.